McKnight to the screen. Hi, Jordynn. How are you?
Hello. Hi, everyone.
It's a pleasure to meet you virtually, at least.
And yes.
Yeah. That Merritt was able to connect us. You are all the way in Geneva, Switzerland right now, right?
Yes. Yes, very far. Far from home.
Super far. What time is it over there, by the way?
Right now it's 7:52.
Okay.
I haven't decided what I'm going to eat for dinner yet, but yes, it's 7:52.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, a bit of a time difference for us. So I just want to go ahead and open the floor for you to just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll dive right into the conversation and I'll ask you the questions from there.
Okay. So a little bit about me. Like it was said, my name is Jordynn McKnight. I moved to Switzerland about 2 or so years ago, in 2018, and I come from the East Coast. So I'm from the Northern Virginia area, right outside of DC. I also lived in New York right before I moved here. I am a UX designer and art director and a visual designer. And so I've kind of worked in a lot of different fields, from advertising to in-house at a couple of fashion houses, as well as design agencies. And right now I'm at an international organization here in Geneva. And so that's a little bit about me, some fun stuff. I love to cook. I love to eat. I play volleyball as well, which is how I knew Merritt, which is our mutual friend. And then I went to school in North Carolina. So I went to Elon University in North Carolina for both my undergrad and my graduate.
Wow, sounds like you've been busy, number one, but doing yeah, and having some amazing experience. So my first question for you is, what brought you to Switzerland? Like, out of all of the countries and places you could go, was there a certain reason why you decided to move abroad to Switzerland?
Honestly, no. Switzerland was never really part of my plan, to be honest.
Wow.
At the time I was working, what was part of my plan is that I knew I wanted to live abroad, right? And so I have family in New York. When I moved to New York, I was like, New York is not super new to me. It's great, it's fun, but New York is also one of those places where you have so much fun and then you're just there for 10 years, and so I was like, I'm gonna give myself 2 years, 3 years, and then I need to get abroad, or it's just never gonna happen. And so I ended up leaving my job, and I was just applying, and I saw a position on LinkedIn, and I was like, let me just apply. It's probably not gonna work out. I don't have a visa. Like, I'm sure it's not gonna work out. And it worked out. So it just happened, right? Exactly. And it's one of those things where when the pieces started to come together, you're just like, something is working outside of myself. Everything is coming together, and I think I just need to follow this and kind of see what is going to happen. And so I'm glad I did, but it never was part of my plan ever. And I feel like most people in Geneva say the same thing. They didn't plan to be here, but they ended up here.
Really? Wow. That's okay. So tell us a little bit about, because for me, I would love to go to Switzerland, Geneva. I've never been. So tell us a little bit about Geneva, the culture, kind of the customs, maybe some of the awesome things that you've seen or your favorite places to go. We'll start off with that.
Yeah, so Switzerland is an interesting country because it has 4 official languages, right? And so I think a lot of people know that there is Swiss German that's spoken here, but there's also French. And in Geneva, we speak French. And so you have a lot of people from France that actually come to Geneva to work. And so it's basically France, to be honest.
Okay.
And so you have a lot of French culture, right, on this side. Beautiful mountains, of course. You have the Swiss Alps. You can go skiing a lot. I love to go skiing in the winter time. Geneva is an interesting city. It's small. What we like to say is it's a well-known village, right? So you still have that small town feel. But a lot of people know about Geneva just because there's a lot of international organizations here. And so some fun things in the wintertime, it can kind of get hard because not a lot of people are staying in Geneva per se. They're going out to the mountains and they're getting chalets and things like that. And so I picked up skiing when I was here. And so that's what we do in the winter. We run to France because it's much cheaper. And we go skiing. That's another thing about Geneva and Switzerland as a whole. It's pretty expensive. It's very expensive. And one of the top 3 expensive countries in the world. And so when I first moved here, I actually didn't eat meat, which I sorry for any vegans or vegetarians, I actually love meat. And so it's so expensive where like a lot of people don't eat meat because just adjusting to having to pay that much to eat meat is crazy. So there's a lot of cultural shifts that had to happen when you moved here. But yeah, some of the fun things I like to do, like I said, is ski. I play volleyball, so I joined a volleyball group here. A lot of my friends come from my job just because the ratio of people that work at my job and that live in Geneva is quite high. So I run into coworkers all the time. But there's beautiful parks here. There's a giant lake here. And they just built a beach here, a sand beach and a rock beach. So we do that in the summer. So there's a lot of little things going on. Yeah, and then Geneva is also really great just because of its position in Europe. It's really easy to hop on a plane and be in Paris or be in London or, you know, wherever. So that's really has been a big advantage. So
it sounds amazing. Definitely on my list. I definitely want to go. So tell us, what I found so interesting and I've been wondering is like for people like you, Jordynn, and then Merritt in Spain, I mean, you guys were dealing with a pandemic in a country that's, you know, you guys have been living in for a little bit, but it's not like you were born and raised in that country. So what was it like when the pandemic first happened and you were and you're in Switzerland? Like, how has Switzerland been dealing with the pandemic? Tell me a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, I think I'm very thankful that I didn't just move to Geneva. I had been here for about a year and a half at that point. And so I had my group of friends. I knew my way around the city. I knew how to, I'm still learning French, but I knew how to say those little things to get me by. I think this would have been a very jarring experience if I didn't know anything and I had just moved here, like a lot of people. And so it was good because I had my friends and family, and a lot of my friends are also from the US as well. And so I had my Swiss friends who are like, we're here if you need anything, you know, let us know. But I also had my American friends that are like, you know, we are commiserating together. As soon as we can get out and go home and visit, we're going to do it together, you know. So that was very, very helpful. One of my roommates is also she's also American as well. And so that was really, really great just to kind of have other people that you can, you know, be around with that understands exactly where you're coming from. And then also not just American, but African American, which is a really big piece during the pandemic as well. And so that was, for me, honestly, it wasn't too horrible. I really enjoy working from home. I'm one of those people who are like, oh, none of that. So that has been good. And I think the nature of my work has made it really easy. I'm blessed to be in a situation where I can work from home. But yeah, I can't say that it's been too horrible. The way that Switzerland is running things it's not as great as I'm sure American media has put it out to be in terms of like Europe is, you know, the gold standard. That's not the situation. There has definitely been a couple of weird and misleading information. Yeah, and I think also, you know, it starts to get hot. People want to go back out. So we were very much in a really difficult situation come August of last year because we were going up on our second wave and we were just, you know, people did all this stuff in the summer and we were now hitting the consequences. And so we had a really, really bad fall and end of year season because of it. So yeah, things are definitely not perfect here either. We're still like working from home. It's mandated for us, you know, mask is not mandated, but it's highly encouraged. But yeah, we're also starting to see it's getting hot outside. So people are starting to kind of loosen up. So yeah, we're excited to kind of see how things turn. We also, vaccines, that whole situation hasn't been going very smoothly for us in just Europe as a whole, the EU as a whole, I mean. And so, yeah, it's quite messy, to be honest.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about, like, I know you said you're learning French, living in Geneva. Is it a situation, I always like asking people living and working abroad, is it a situation where do you feel like you absolutely need to know the local language or at least a little bit of it in order to like survive or basically get around? Like, if there's somebody who wants to study abroad somewhere and they're like, oh, I maybe they want to go to Japan, for instance, but they know like absolutely no Japanese or something. Like Switzerland, since that's where you are, would you say anybody who comes there, they need to be at least know, I don't know, maybe level 1 French, or, you know, try to learn
Right.
something like that? What are your thoughts?
So for me, I came to Switzerland. I took French in college, actually. I took it for like 1 year. And I can't say that I really retained a lot of information because I didn't. And so preparing to come here, I very much was on the Duolingos and the Babbels and all of those apps just to kind of get some of that basic information. But you don't need it, to be honest, especially I think in Geneva. Geneva is a very international city, and I think with a lot of the cities in Europe, you'll see that as well, just because English is spoken as the official business language. Just to do a lot of things internationally, people default to English. And so you'll see that in Germany and France. They really hate to speak English, but you'll be fine. And so I think just learning those quick phrases, like, you know, I don't know French yet, but I'm learning. Do you speak English? That I switch to that probably like 3 times a day, you know, and most people do, or they know a little bit. But also, you know, take it upon yourself to actually try to learn the language when you have time. But most people, it's totally fine. And I've had that same experience in Asia as well, of just, again, a lot of people speak English in terms of business and travel and international communications. And so somebody somewhere can help you that knows English. It's not, we're in a really good position. There is a lot of privilege in knowing English and having that in our back pocket. And so you'll be fine. If you're all out there, you'll be fine.
Well, no, that's really great to know, because I'm always curious, is it like, oh my gosh, because I've had some friends before who are like, I won't go anywhere where, like, you know, they don't speak English, or or I don't know the language. And so I'm wondering, you know, because it varies country to country. So living abroad, I know a lot of people talk about the amazing experiences that they have, and they form lifelong friendships, and, you know, it changes them. So like, by living abroad, what have been some of the things that like have changed your perspective, if anything, on how you see the world? And like, what have you learned about yourself from living abroad?
Whew, so many things. I'm like, what do we want to talk about today? I can really go into it. There's a lot of different things. I think within this year, I think what's on the top of my mind is definitely the race situation, right? That has been really interesting to have those conversations outside of people who understand it in the context of the United States, right? So like I said, I grew up in Northern Virginia. I went to school in North Carolina. Like, this is not something that's completely new, just, you know, racism in general. But having those conversations over here, especially working at an international organization where you have people who represent people from or places all over the world, having to have that conversation of, you know, I don't think Black people have to deal with this. I've never seen a Black person deal with this. It's just a new side of that conversation that is just very interesting, very eye-opening, and just adds new dynamism and dimension to that conversation. So that has been a lot. You know, there's a lot of unlearning, but there's also a lot of learning that's been happening. And then marrying that with dealing with it in a professional space. I think this is probably one of the few times that has been such a big cloud within my professional experience, if that makes sense.
Right.
Just because of my age or whatever. But yeah, so that has been really interesting to go through. I think in terms of travel altogether and living abroad, some of the things that I've learned is just, of course, being open-minded, right? Just, of course, trying new things, being outside of your comfort zone, patience as well, just because, again, of course, people are coming from different perspectives. And so the way that they deal with situations, the way that they think about situations, the way that they communicate about situations is completely different than ways that you may. And so just understanding and being able to have some empathy when you're talking to people or getting in sticky situations. I feel like I have been able to grow that strength. I think it's already a strength of mine to have empathy, but I've been able to grow that a bit more. And so, yeah, I would say that communication piece and just being able to be on the same page, that has definitely grown a lot. Yeah.
Wow. Have you ran in, like, do you find that there's a lot of people of color, even if they're not studying abroad, but do you see, is it kind of one of those things? Because I know in places like Kyrgyzstan and all those, people say, you know, they're not used to seeing people of color, right? And so I know, of course, in Switzerland, I'm sure there's some, but have you found that you've run into maybe travelers who are even there for, who were there maybe before the pandemic for vacation, even who looked like you, or what's your experience been with that?
Well, I mean, we have to remember that Europe was very involved in colonialism, and still is. So a lot of that has come back to Europe itself. So there, and even Switzerland, it may not have had a direct involvement in colonialism, but it definitely funded a lot of interesting endeavors. So because of that, there is tons of Black people everywhere. We're everywhere, right? There's a lot of mixed race people as well. So that's really nice to see. Just, it doesn't seem as polar, I guess, sometimes. I think that polarity is still there, just it manifests in different ways, but it's really, it's just different. But yes, we are here, which is really nice. And that's the good thing, is like, I think being in the United States, of course, I was around a lot of people who are not first generation Africans, but like literally lived in a country in Africa. Of course you have that, but not to the extent that you have it when you leave the United States, of course, right? And so seeing that perspective and that difference of Blackness is always really great. But yeah, I think we're everywhere, right? Yeah. I would say, I mean, this is just speaking for Europe, right? But definitely been, to the Middle East, and I've been in countries in Asia where, yeah, it was like, let me take a picture with you because I haven't seen a Black person before. Right. So that's always interesting. And it's funny because my siblings and I, we do siblings trips, and one of our last trips that happened all the time. I think also because we're all very tall, we're all very smiley, we look like we could be triplets. So people are like, oh, let me take a picture, or trying to like sneak a picture with us in the background. And I think, on one hand, you could be really upset, right? But I think from our perspective, we were like, I like that you are admired. It's not coming from malintent, right? It's coming from the fact that they admire this new thing. They've never seen it before. And you could take the perspective of like, I don't want to be on display for people, which yeah, there's a little bit of that. But the other part of it is, this is the best that we can do in this situation. Let's just be a role model for, these people that they've never met before. And we try to spark a conversation if we can. A lot of times in situations where, maybe that person doesn't know the same language as us, so there's not much that you can do, but we try to spark a conversation from that situation, right? And try to grow from that situation. But yes, all in all, we are everywhere. And we search for it in situations where it seems like we're not around. We're like, where are the Black people? So.
Okay. Right. No, which is why I find it so interesting, because I remember my friend, she went to Italy, and she was saying that even there she had some people like wanting to take pictures, with her and things like that. I was just surprised, because I was like, okay, Europe is one of those places where I would think, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would think you would see a little bit of everything like normal, but it's just amazing how sometimes in certain countries that, that's not always the case, or people are still surprised, or people are just curious. And so I always wondered, particularly for people of color, what has been their experience? Do they experience a lot of discrimination or racism, abroad? But it sounds from your perspective, you haven't really had too much, I would say. Have you had a couple of experiences where you did experience a little discrimination or racism, or for the majority you've had kind of a pleasurable experience?
I think the majority have definitely had a pleasurable experience. I will say though that it just manifests differently, right? So it's not the blatant in your face racism that you will see in the United States. It's much more subtle, much more, yeah. It's much more subtle. A lot of times I don't even know if people realize that's what they're doing. A lot of microaggressions, right?
Okay.
It's more of those small little moments, not necessarily calculated big moments, but small little moments. Doesn't make it any better, especially when you're on the receiving end, that it doesn't really change much. But it does happen, and it's just different. It's not the same. And the conversation hasn't evolved in the ways that it has in the United States as well. And so when you are in those situations, and if you have the energy to talk about it with that person and kind of educate them, and if you don't, that's totally understandable if you don't have that energy, because that happens, right? But you'll find that people aren't used to having this conversation. So you may not get that far, right? Because they just don't see it in that way. So it is a little bit, it's not the same, it's different. It has its own difficulties. But it definitely does exist. It's definitely still here. You'll see it a lot in business. Like, there is a glass ceiling where, you're not going to see a lot of Black people leading certain companies. And when you do, a lot of people are upset about it, and they're not quite sure why they're upset, but they're upset. And we all know that, right? So it's, like I said, it's very subtle, but it's still there.
So what was it like when over in the US, I would say last summer, when like George Floyd was happening, Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, like all of those issues coming up. And I was talking with Merritt, and I'm sure for you guys, you're in a different country and you're watching all of that play out, but you're not obviously in your home country. Was there anything that you guys did to kind of do your part, even in Geneva? Did you participate in anything where you guys were you like, I don't care, I'm in Switzerland, but I'm going to make sure, we're protesting, or my voice is being heard? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, what a time. So again, it's obviously you're taking different things from this experience just because you're not physically there, right? You're not always getting all the information at the same time other people are getting it. And that kind of skews the way that you respond. But I think also just working in the environment and the industry that I'm working in right now, which is that international organization space, who, these organizations really want to make a difference in the world, right? So, when there is a lapse of judgment or a lapse of action, a lot of us, especially during this time, we are saying, okay, we're supposed to be the leaders, right, in making the world a better place. How are we doing it in this situation? And so a lot of the African Americans, and we also have offices, for my particular organization, we have offices in the United States. And so we coupled with those African Americans there, one, to keep us informed with what's going on, also to show support and help and solidarity, but also to kind of understand, like, how can we have some institutional issues. There are some Geneva specific issues that touch on the underlying themes behind what's going on right now, right? Which is just, Blackness, and a giant negativity around Blackness, one, and then also just not, from the business setting, not supporting people who are Black, not pushing them forward, not even recognizing, and that's the biggest problem that we're finding in Switzerland, is that they don't take in data like this, right? So this is not something that they've done before. In the United States, you have, because this is such an issue, and like I said, we're more involved in that conversation, that data piece is there. And so it's easier to make changes because you can rely on data. You're informed, right? And you can say, okay, we're going to do this, and this is how it affects us, and you can measure it. You don't have that here, right? They don't, when you're filling out forms or anything like that, they don't ask you your ethnicity. That's not what they do. So a lot of companies have no idea how many Black employees they have, which means they can't track if they're only hiring people who are of color, right?
Right.
So we had a lot of very deep systemic gaps that we were identifying. And so a lot of the African Americans got together and kind of led one, starting an employee resource group. So, you know, a lot of companies may have that where they have, you know, a Black group or a Latino group or whatever. We don't have any of that. So we were like, this is the time for us to do that for Black people. And, you know, kind of telling our story. We also put out a lot of news and just general information, but we didn't have anything that touched on systemic racism. And so getting people comfortable saying systemic racism, that was a big battle that we had to go through. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, and getting people used to saying the word Black as well. And across languages, that was a big problem as well. But also educating people on how to talk about it, because that is what we do. We talk about the issue. So how do we correctly speak about it? How do we make sure we're capitalizing the B in Black? How do we make sure we understand all of the different forms of systemic racism? And so there was a lot of work that we had to do on our side in Geneva, just to make sure that these situations don't happen in the same way in the future. Of course, they're going to continue happening because we're kind of peeling off the Band-Aid right now, and people are actually seeing what's happening, what's going on, and what the problem is. But we don't have to go through it in the exact same way. And so that was one of our biggest things, was just kind of making those small changes so that we're not in a situation where you can't write about the issues that are happening in the United States because you don't have anyone Black that can give a true perspective on that, right? So we're trying to fix those little things. And Geneva and Switzerland as well, there's a lot of Black people. When we had a march, we had a giant protest here, and I remember looking around, and me and my friends, as 3 Black girls, we were just like, I've never seen as many Black people in Geneva in my life. But we're looking around and we're like, this is amazing. You know, this is amazing. And it was packed. And so we're here, and there's still a lot of things that need to be done. But a lot of people have been inspired by what's going on and have been pushing in their own spaces. And yeah, I think, you know, the conversation went from, this is an issue that is specific to the United States, to this is an issue that is actually all over the world, and we had no idea. And so, yeah, it's been interesting, but there's definitely a lot that we were able to do on our end.
No, that's incredible. That's amazing. And kudos to you guys for still making sure, like, you know, doing your part and saying it doesn't matter that, you know, I'm here or there, like this is still important. We still need to raise awareness. So can you tell us a little bit, I know you're in the international organization space. Can you tell us a little bit more about your organization specifically and what it focuses on and some of the things you do in your roles at work?
Yeah, so I work at the World Economic Forum. We're an international organization that focuses on just making sure that the world is a better place in literally every single industry, right? So from food to AI to entertainment, to circular economy, literally making sure that we are pushing the world in a better direction. And so there's a lot that can be done in that. And so what I specifically do, so like I said before, I'm a designer. And so I work on a very small team, and we design a lot of the publications that come out. So if a team, you know, does a large body of research, of course, you're going to have that publication that comes out. You'll have maybe a small website, so we'll design that as well. Any of the like data visualizations that may come with that. But also we have a lot of really fun digital projects that come out. So interactive mapping tools, things like that. And so, yeah, I'm one of the few designers that we have, and we have a team of great freelancers that we work with. And so that's where that art director piece comes in. And so I pull in a lot of the art and illustration as well for some of the work that we do. The organization as a whole, like I said, from, you know, reporting on news that's happening, you know, all over the world, to having conversations with government leaders and bringing together the public and the private, right, to make sure that we're actually making informed decisions and we're actually leading in a way that makes sense for everyone, both citizens and governments and businesses. That's a lot of what we do. And so it's all over the place, but it kind of has to be because we're talking about a global impact. So.
Right. No, that's incredible. So Jordynn, like, where do you go from here? Like, where do you see yourself 5, 10 years from now? Is Geneva your new home? Do you think you'll stay there for the rest of your life? Do you plan on coming back to the US? What are your, like, where's your head at, I would say, right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I ask myself every day, trying to figure that out. What I do know is that, Geneva is a great city, but I just don't know if it's my city. I I am very much a person who loves like large, big cities, places that have a lot of things going on. And so I think in maybe 5 to 10 years, probably within the next couple of years, I'm not going to be in Geneva. I'll be in another city, hopefully. In terms of coming back to the United States, I've been thinking about that, right? I don't know, I'm kind of open to not coming back. But I also, there's some very specific things that I really like about the United States as well.
Right.
And there is a lot of privilege with being from the United States, right? That you don't really see until you leave the United States.
Right.
And so, yeah, trying to understand what works for me. I'm not quite sure. And I think that's something that my significant other and I have been having a lot of conversations about, because he's from Europe. So, there's a big, Black exit that's going on, and I'm like, maybe I should just stay over here. So I'm still trying to figure that piece out. I think for me, in terms of what I do, I have tons of different projects that I'm really interested in, from traveling and storytelling to food and food history. And so I definitely plan on kind of tapping into that a bit more in the coming months, definitely. So you will definitely see something coming along those lines. And then also just continuing to work in design and continuing in working and building a better world, and a world that kind of works for as many people as possible, and an inclusive and ethical world. So those are some of my passions. And I'm one of those people who enjoys change, right? So I can get up and do something else. And so, yeah, I will be doing a lot of different things in the next 5 years, but I also can't say what exactly they are. So
no, I think that's the part. I think that's what makes it kind of even more interesting, right? It's like, I just want to stress that, like, it's okay to not necessarily know. I know there's so much pressure on us to know, right? Like your next step, but sometimes I think that's when our stories end up being the most beautiful and like even more intriguing, because you don't know, like you said, this Geneva wasn't even a plan for you, but yet you're here for, you've been there for two years. And I think that's incredible. So my final question to you would be, for others who are kind of looking to do the same thing, right? Maybe they're watching the interview now and they see like, wow, that's so inspiring. Like I never considered like living or working abroad. Like, are there any tips or things that you would share for people if they do want to do this, that like, just from your experience, some key things that they need to consider? Because sometimes maybe people might, move or work abroad and then they're like, maybe they just don't have the best experience, right? And they're just like, this is not for me. Are there any like pointers that you can say they need to watch out for, or better tips to help them plan for that you can share with us?
Yeah, in terms of planning, definitely understanding your finances and having some sort of financial plan. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Especially us being younger, we need to understand how to invest and how to invest properly, how to invest for the long term. Because I think with my situation, in terms of not exactly knowing where I want to end up, it makes it a little bit difficult to financially plan responsibly. And so having a plan that can be as flexible as you want to be in your life. If that means building another skill that allows you to either work remotely if we end up being in another pandemic type situation, but have like a contingency plan in terms of finances, and have multiple streams of income, definitely. Try to figure out what that could be. And that could look like anything. It doesn't have to be super hard, but figure out what that is. I would also say, understand who you are as a person. What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want your life to look like, right? So I may not know what I want to do in 5 years exactly, but I know what I want my life to look like, right? And so it's easier for me to trust the things that come up because I can see this is in the direction of where I want my life to go, you know? And so it's almost like calculated risk, right? I know what direction I'm moving towards, so I can take this risk because I'm not going to fall off of my plan, right? Because I'm still moving in the same direction. So really understanding yourself, understanding your passions, understanding what you like and don't like, and who you want to be around. I would also say that's the last part is get used to talking to people that you don't know, get used to calling people for an informational interview, get used to building all of the information that you can. I'm the type of person, even if it's a quick decision, I'm going to be up all night on YouTube, looking at all of the videos that I can to understand what I got myself into, reaching out to people who's a friend of a friend of a friend to understand what their experience is, you know, so try to make yourself that type of person where you get all the information that you can before you make these huge jumps, because you'll really want it. You don't want to go into a situation where you know nothing. And I can't say that's something that I've ever done, right? I'm very much a planner. And so that's a bit too much for me to just hop into someplace and not know. So yeah, I would say get as much information as you can and get used to just talking to people and hearing people's stories. It's amazing how much the human connection and how powerful the human connection is. So try to find ways to tap into that.
Right, I agree. I have one more question. My cousin is asking if it's cold year round in Switzerland. What's the weather like right now? People are always
it's definitely not cold year round. I would say, especially Geneva. So we are in a valley, right? We are surrounded by Alps. And so we get the benefit, or maybe not the benefit, but we have, the warmth kind of stays in the valley. So it never really snows in Geneva itself. But as soon as you like go into the mountains, which is like 10 minutes to the east, it's snow. So it's nice because you get that change. And then in the summer, it's absolutely beautiful. It's very warm, very hot. We have heat waves. A lot of the apartments don't have air conditioning or central heating or anything like that. So it gets hot. And like I said, they built a beach. So we're on that beach and we're at that lake and we're in the water. There's lakes and rivers here in Geneva. And so people are always out by the water because it gets pretty sweltering in the summer. So
it definitely sounds like it does. Oh my gosh. But it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. But I want to thank you so much, Jordynn, for taking time out of your day and with the time difference and everything to come on the show. You shared great information, and we definitely look forward to all of the projects that you have in the future, and keep us up to date, and hopefully we can have you back on the show with some updates if you do decide, if you narrow it down what you want to do anytime soon. And for those of you who are watching, her information is down below. Please pronounce your Instagram.
Yeah, it's just Santana Leanna. It's one of those things that you had since you were a child and you just never changed it. So.
Okay, I just wanted to, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to butcher it and say it. But you guys can keep up with Jordynn and her activities at Santana Leanna on IG, and then on Twitter at Jordynn McKnight. I forgot the I on that. Sorry about that. But again, thank you so much, Jordynn, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yes, I'm excited. And now I know about your show, so I'm going to be tuning in as well. So this is really great.
I do want to say, if you have any other friends or anyone who's doing also amazing things, that's basically why I have this show. Just everyday, ordinary people with extraordinary stories like yours. So please send them my way.
Will do. And we love to see it. Keep doing what you're doing, because this is very important.
You as well. Thank you so much, Jordynn. Bye.
Bye.
All right, you guys, if you are just now tuning in, that concludes the show for today. Again, I'm Jirah Mickle, your host. This is the Jirah Mickle Show every Tuesday from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. We had a great show with 3 amazing guests. If you want to be on the show, please reach out to me in comments or send me a direct message. If you have my phone number, call me, text me at any time. I'd love to have you guys on the show. And again, this show, is for you guys. I want to connect you guys with everyday people. Everyone has a story to tell. And I believe that stories, they inform people, they inspire people, they entertain people, they educate people, and they also bring about change. And you don't know, just by coming on the show and just by listening to the guests that you did today, you dive into this conversation and you come out with a new perspective. So this show, I'm passionate. I'm a passionate storyteller, and I love what I do. And I know for you guys, if there's something that you love doing, please share, and you can relate as well. My cousin Yolanda said something really great and key, which is understanding your passions. I agree. She said that passions that turn into careers are the best because they feel less like work. And I agree with you 100%, Yolanda, for sure. When you have a passion and you're just able to dive right in, it doesn't feel like it's work. You wake up every day happy. You're not, grudgy. You're not doing like the typical, maybe your friends or someone else is like, I have to go to work in the morning. You're excited. And I think that's when your creativity is at an all-time high, and you try to find yourself, growing and learning even more, and you want to be the best in your field and career. And the late nights, even if you're staying up late to do your work and do your job, it's not a problem because you're so driven by your passion and what you want to do. It ends up being great overall. So thank you all so much for tuning into the show. Next Tuesday, we'll have 3 more amazing guests again. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will see you all next time on the show. So thank you guys again. See you next week.